What up, y'all? It's Rob Racing, and welcome back to a new video. In today's video, I'm going to be testing out and seeing which generation of Corvette is the fastest Corvette. Now, of course, all these cars are modified, but honestly, you're going to actually be surprised with the results that I found. And like I said, we're on the road to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so if you could, I would appreciate it if you like, comment, and subscribe. And like I said, this is going to be me testing all the generations of Corvettes. Now, I will say this before I get into the video. It does all come down to realistically tuning and just how the cars are set up to handle in the game. So if one car handles better than the other, then I apologize. It's just because of the fact that, well, Gran Turismo has these cars set up to where they can only handle as well as the real life counterparts are able to. So if you see like the C1 handling better than like the C5, for example, then obviously, that's just how the game is based. I am using stock suspension on all cars just to make it, a little bit more even between the classes. And like I said, for the first car, it's going to be the C1. I'm going to go based on all the generations in order. Now, the only Corvette that we actually don't have in the game is the C5. And of course, the Corvettes that I'm missing out on are, of course, the race car, the 1959 race car, and the Road GT3, I'm pretty sure. And of course, the stock C7 Corvette. I wanted to go with the highest horsepower variants of all the generations of the Corvette because I think it'll be a little bit more balanced compared to just running like a stock one. And each car is going to get a warm-up lap on top of getting a 1 lap limit. I might it's not one of those where I'm gonna try to get the fastest lap possible and then do it. No, I'm just doing 1 lap and then 1 lap to where it counts on the board. And the first one, of course, like I said, is the C1. Now the C1 actually didn't handle all that bad. I think I could have probably done a little bit better if I had changed the tires, but I like this more just for the looks of it. In terms of handling, it doesn't handle all that bad. It could be a little better. There's a lot of again, it could be based on just the tires I have on the car, but it understeers a lot, and it also has a lot of wheel spin, which again, tires, of course. And it does feel like a 1950s Corvette or a 1950s car in the sense that it doesn't really handle all that well. And of course, it's a big, powerful car with a kind of like a dinosaur handling mechanic. And I tried my best. In no way am I a pro when it comes to driving. These are all automatic, by the way, just to make it a fair across all of them, so I can't rev them out. These are all tuned to specifically be as close to each other as possible because again, all these cars are going to be coming down to is really the gearing and how many gears they have. But as you see with the first Corvette, we get a 124. And next up is the C2 generation, which is again, they all have the same engine swap except for the top 3 cars. Or no, my bad. Only 2 of these have the different engine swaps. And the C8 actually doesn't have an engine swap currently, so it's going to be on its own. But you'll actually be surprised with the results. Now, the C2, again, gets a warm-up lap on top of a 1-lap qualifier. The C2, in my opinion, again, and I think anyone can agree with me, is probably the most beautiful Corvette ever made. And also, in game, it actually handles pretty well for its age. If I'm being honest, it's probably the most balanced Corvette in terms of just a classic Corvette in the game. Like, it handles pretty well. It's very predictable. It's not like super slingshotty or anything. It doesn't understeer as much. And again, these are all stock suspension. And for this to be stock suspension with 1121 horsepower engine and handle almost as good as like one of the newer Vettes, it was actually kind of surprising to me. Now, I did have a lot of issues with wheel spin, but that's just because of the way the car is set up in the game for the wheel hop, which again I couldn't eliminate due to the fact that there's just certain things I didn't put on the cars just to make them a little bit more realistic in the sense that, come on, they're 1121 horsepower. I'm trying to do a handling test. But on the first lap, I pretty much destroyed the original C1 Corvette's time by almost 10 seconds. And here's the main lap that we're doing. Is again, like I said, it handles pretty well. It stops pretty well. And if I'm being honest, it's probably my favorite generation of Corvette. If I was to ever have a Corvette in real life, it would be either the C5 for like like a realistic goal. But if I was able to ever get a C2 Corvette, it would definitely be that one for sure. And again, all these cars, except for leading up to the C4 generation, are 5 speeds to begin with. So all the C1, C2, and C3 are 5-speed manuals, whereas the C4, C6, and C7 are 6 and 7-speed manual transes. And of course, the C8's an 8-speed. So again, the C1 is actually, or not my bad, the C2 is actually pretty fast around the track. I was kind of really surprised about the time I got, if I'm being honest. I mean, for a car from 1963 to have like an engine that really shouldn't be in the car to get a 115 was pretty fast. And for the next car, we're going to be moving on to the C3. Now, for the C3, I actually had a lot of issues with this car. As you see in the first turn, I'm stopping, I'm slowing down as much as I can, and the car does not want to stop. I don't know if it was the brakes that I had on it, which are the max level brakes that you could get in the game for this car, but I just couldn't get it to stop, and it understeered like crazy. In my opinion, it's probably the worst of the 3 engine swap cars to have. Now it obviously still beat the C1, but it didn't even hold a candle to the C2 and how fast that car was around the track. So if I'm, and again, I'm re-ranking these in terms of top speed. So far, it's the C2 followed by the C3 and again the C1. And this car it doesn't handle that well. It looks really nice. I will say the C3 is my probably my second or third, no, probably my third or fourth favorite generation Vet. But it just doesn't handle all that well in the game. And again, these are all based off of the handling physics. Now, I did use the convertible over the fixed roof hardtop. Maybe there might have been a difference. I might go back later on and test out and see, but I highly doubt there's really a difference. They're both really pretty much the exact same car except for the roof, which I don't really think is that big of a deal in terms of the game. And this car got like a 123, and it beat the C1 by a second. So, not that fast of a car. Now we're moving on to the C4. Now the C4 off-rip, in my opinion, is probably the best handling so far of the Corvette generations. You can really tell that the difference in handling, and also just how the engine swaps take in different cars. Because again, this is the first one with a 6-speed. Now, you're not really going to be able to get any gear past 5 or 6 in this track. But this car just benefits from it having like better, stuff that is implemented in the game for this car to have. Now, I really enjoy driving it. It's really fast, if I'm being honest. And it easily broke the C2's, record pretty decently, actually. I was actually kind of surprised with how fast it was. And, it's a really, really good car, if I'm being honest. And if I was to get any of the classic Corvette engine swaps for, ever again, like if I was to just rebuy them all, it would probably be this one and then the C2, and then that's it. I wouldn't worry about the C3 or the C1. And this car again was really, really quick. It got 110 off of that run, which I was really shocked by. I really didn't think that the C4 had it. But let's move on to the C6 generation. Now the C6, again, next to like the C5, are like my 2 favorite Corvettes. But this car, with the engine swap that it has, just was demolishing this entire course. Now, I got rid of the first lap that I did for the last couple cars, just to cut down on like the time that I'm taking in the vid. But if I'm being honest, the C6 in general is the quintessential engine swap car to have in the entire game, just because of how fast it is. Now, this car has, close to 1900 horsepower on tap, which is, for anything in any game, is just insane. And this car, you know, would think, oh, it'd be really squirrely just because of how much power. No, it handled it a lot. Now, the one thing I did notice is that compared to the last two generations of Corvette, yes, granted, this one had a lot of power, but due to it having a lot of power, you spent a lot of time having to slow down a lot sooner compared to the other ones. And also, those are a little bit more torquey, as you can see, but this one just has the top speed, which just destroys everything else. And again, really fast. We got a 107 with this one. So next is on to the C7. Now the C7 is the last of the over 1,000 horsepower Corvettes that we get in the game currently. And this one is the basis for the other, I think, 5 engine swaps in the for that generation of Vet, if I'm not mistaken. And the C7 is by far the best one to have. I mean, 7-speed manual trans, you know, just insanely fast, perfect handling car. I think the ZR1 in general is just a really good Corvette. And I feel like until, like, and even in real life, I feel like it's the best Corvette that has ever come out ever. And, you know, just to have like the ability to, you know, make it better with more power is just insane. And it handled just so perfectly. I had no issues with this car, and you would think, you know, the C6 would have been the fastest Corvette. No, it surprisingly was this one. But not surprisingly, but it's just because this one's just set up so much better to handle compared to that. And again, like I said, in the other one, you spend a lot more time slowing down from the top speed that you have in comparison to this one. And also, that engine swap doesn't really get up to speed all that fast. And that's more of like a top speed one. Like, and that's how it is in real life. It's more of a top speed engine. But let's move on to the last generation, which is the C8. And now we are on to the current generation of Corvette, the C8. And the C8 was actually pretty surprising. Granted, it was down on power, but I believe that this is the best handling Corvette in the game currently. It's because of how balanced it is. And also, again, I feel like having a lot of horsepower in terms of these types of races isn't good if it's not able to slow down properly and also accelerate hard enough out of the turns. This one, again, didn't beat the C7, which is, you know, top of the hill currently. And it didn't beat, I'm pretty sure it actually did beat the C6 by like a second. I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it did beat the C6, my fault. So, in terms of the best Corvettes in the game, is C7, C8, C6, C4, C2, C3, and then C1. So again, the C7, top of the hill. You know, second, of course, C8, followed by the C6, and so on and so forth. In terms of which one I would buy, it would definitely be the C6, just because of the horsepower. I mean, you know, you're doing a lot of if you do a lot of races, the C7 or C8 is perfect. But if you do like a lot of drag racing or that anything of that nature, you're gonna be wanting to do the C6. But that's all I gotta say for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I will be going back to more GTA content once I start going live again. I just have to, you know, like I said, get a new headset because this one that I've been using doesn't really work all that well on my PC. I did like a test streaming of it, and it just didn't sound all like the quality I wanted to have. But that's all I gotta say for today. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and y'all take care. Peace out, y'all.